ostensibly to relatives who returned in the early 1960s.
It was from this port that tens of thousands of Korean Japanese made the fateful one-way voyage to North Korea. They've been regarded ever since as effective hostages of the North Korean regime. Their family members who stayed behind have sent large amounts of money to try to ensure they're well treated.
One of the men who helped organize the repatriation is now racked with guilt about his role. Chon Myung-sil says it was all an elaborate plot to extract money. His parents and two brothers were among those who went back. He's since resigned from the Korean Association, where he once worked in the finance department.
The Residents Association was using money from the Korean community banks as its own funds. The investigation into embezzlement will have a big impact. I heard they are having trouble paying salaries and pensions. It could be the end of the organization.
Besides representing North Korea's interests, the association runs schools for the community. These students are from families that remain loyal to the communist dynasty, but their numbers are dwindling, and so is the money they're able to send. North Korea is accused of resorting to drug smuggling to compensate. An unidentified ship, sunk after a shootout with Japanese patrol boats last month, is suspected of being on such a mission. The Japanese government is tightening the screws on North Korea, just as the United States hints it could become a target in the war against terrorism. Charles Scanlon, BBC News, Niigata, Japan.
In the world's developed countries, measles is a disease that poses relatively few risks. In Afghanistan, where the country has suffered years of war, it's a leading cause of death in children. But now, as Damien Grammaticus reports from Kabul, international aid agencies are conducting a campaign to try to vaccinate 9 million of the country's children.
In Anjarak village in western Afghanistan, the call goes out. This is part of a massive nationwide campaign to immunise Afghan children against one of the most deadly diseases. Measles is a leading cause of child mortality in Afghanistan, responsible for the deaths of 35,000 children each year. The United Nations Children's Fund is spending $8 million on this campaign alone. Using local volunteers to help, the aim is to get 9 million children vaccinated against the disease.
People are rushing to just get the immunization for their children because of the importance that this disease have in Afghan society.
This is a country where a quarter of all children die before they reach their 5th birthday. One of the biggest problems is simply getting vaccines to enough of Afghanistan's children. In some areas, like the capital Kabul, it's easy enough. There are clinics and the infrastructure to ensure the vaccines are kept at the right temperature until they're delivered and used. In more remote places like Anjarak, it's a much more difficult task. Here, they're giving away the vaccinations for free. But still, in Afghanistan as a whole, it's thought half of all children don't get the injections they need. And that means thousands upon thousands of children like these will die preventable deaths. Damien Grammaticus, BBC News, Kabul.
The UK's first ever showcase of Asian bridal gowns has taken place in London's West End. It featured outfits from 10 of Britain's leading Asian fashion designers. It's a lucrative business. An average Asian wedding costs up to $30,000 and wedding outfits start at around $3,000. Well, I'm now joined in the studio by one of the organisers of the event, Sawa Ahmed. He's also editor of Asian Bride magazine. Sawa Ahmed, welcome to Asia Today. The Asian wedding industry in the UK is valued at about £300 million. That's a huge business, isn't it?
It's a massive business, and the amazing fact about the Asian wedding business now, it's actually a growing market in the UK. I think that many people have actually turned their back on the institution of marriage, whereas the Asian community are embracing it in ever-increasing numbers. So the market is not only huge, it's actually increasing year on year.
So how genuinely Asian is the wedding experience in the UK?
Well, I think the important thing about the Asian wedding market and the weddings themselves are the fact that they're still steeped heavily in religion and tradition. Although we have all the fancy gizmos and the American stretch limousines and all the fancy music and lights and these wonderful, wonderful outfits, the fact is the central hub of the whole ceremony is very, very steeped in religion, and that really is part of the essential culture and tradition of the Asian community.
Well, we're seeing some wonderful outfits here at the moment, but there are increasing numbers of Asians who are born and bred in Britain who are holding Asian weddings. So how much of their weddings a blend between East and West?
Well, I think that the registry wedding, which is a requirement of English law, has become a much more important part of the Asian wedding market now. In the early days, maybe even 10-15 years ago, it was an afterthought where you'd simply turn up at a registry office, sign some papers, and that was it. Now this is yet one more excuse for a party, and most Asians in the UK marry well beyond their means because this is their last celebration, last chance that they get to spend so much money on something that is really a matter of pride and culture, and it's a time when all the families can get together.
Well, there's also been a trend in the last couple of years for non-Asians to try to add an ethnic twist to their weddings.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, all the Asian designers in the UK report huge and increasing numbers of non-Asians turning up. This is partly due to mixed marriages, but also some completely non-Asian marriages as well are themed as Asian, because I think so many people love the Asian garments, the way they glitter, they sparkle, and also the culture and traditions that have been brought over from the subcontinent are so much part of British society now that it's becoming almost commonplace now to see this happening.
So, Ahmed, thank you very much for joining us on Asia Today.
Thank you.
Finally, the world's most wanted man has been spotted in a Buddhist temple in Thailand. An American artist has sculpted Osama bin Laden's image as a feature piece on the walls of the temple. And as Jonathan Head reports now from Bangkok, it's not surprisingly caused alarm amongst the monks.
At first glance, it's a typical Thai Buddhist temple. But on closer inspection, there's a most untypical embellishment. Osama bin Laden found his way into this temple while it was being decorated with the more usual figures of monkeys and spirits. The abbot who commissioned the sculptures says he had no idea who the bearded figure was.
I never knew who he was before. No one around here knew about him. It was only when the sculpture was nearly finished and the newspapers and media reported this story that I realized it was him. And I learnt about him because of the sculpture.
He shouldn't have been surprised, though. The man in charge of the decorations made his name 2 years ago by incorporating a gilded statue of David Beckham into another temple. This time, he says, he was inspired by the events of September the 11th.
I built it as part of the temple because that means it will remain for a long time. If I'd built it as a standalone statue, there's more of a chance it would be destroyed or damaged.
It is a controversial addition, but in a spirit of tolerance, the monks say that now he's appeared in their temple, the figure of the world's most wanted man will be allowed to stay. Jonathan Head, BBC News, Bangkok.
In Beijing, celebrations have begun to mark the eve of the Chinese Lunar New Year. It's also called the Spring Festival, and the Chinese New Year is the most important day of the Chinese calendar. Thousands gather to watch traditional acrobatic and theatrical performances. This will be the year of the horse in Chinese astrology, seen as auspicious for enterprise. Well, on that auspicious note, that's all from Asia Today for the moment. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.
This is BBC News 24, a reminder of the headlines. Israeli forces have carried out a series of airstrikes on Gaza after the killing of 2 Israeli women. And police on the Isle of Man are hunting a double killer after 2 teenagers were found dead. And the government is planning to put some of England's worst NHS hospitals under new management. I'll be back at 4 o'clock with a full bulletin of world news. But now on BBC News 24, it's time for Reporters.
Uncovering Iranian involvement in Afghanistan, David Loyne visits the west of the country, where Kabul's influence is noticeable by its absence. Welcome to Reporters. I'm Anita McNaught. Within weeks of coming to power, Afghanistan's interim government is having difficulty imposing its authority over the country's provinces. Gardez has seen some of the most serious fighting in Afghanistan since the fall of the Taliban. Just one more sign that Afghanistan remains a divided country with a central government whose influence in some areas is virtually non-existent. Another place giving Afghanistan's interim leader Hamid Karzai sleepless nights is the western city of Herat. The city is controlled by the warlord governor Ismail Khan and his Tajik fighters who've been fighting with ethnic Pashtuns. In addition, America has accused Iran of meddling there in an attempt to increase its influence. Iran, of course, was branded part of the axis of evil by George Bush earlier this week. In this exclusive report, David Loyne has been to Herat to see just what it is that the Iranians are supposed to be up to.
After a generation caught in a seemingly endless cycle of war, Afghanistan now has a one-off opportunity to come down from the wall of death. But the defeat of the Taliban has not automatically brought peace and harmony, particularly here in the western city of Herat at the crossroads of Asia. It looks and feels different from the rest of Afghanistan here, and it is different. In ancient times, Herat was the capital city of an empire which stretched from the Chinese border in the east, taking in most of modern Iran and Iraq to the west. Now this is Afghanistan's gateway to Iran, and Iran, with its consistent, coherent anti-American strategy, is anxious about America imposing a secular, Western-looking government in Afghanistan. Iran is probing through Herat for ways to influence the future of the whole country.
Beneath these city walls, Genghis Khan once fought Tamburlaine. In the new millennium, it could be at the heart of a new battlefield in the realignment of forces pitting Washington against radical Islam. If the struggle since September the 11th settles into a sort of Cold War, then this could be its Berlin Wall.
The clearing up will go on from the real war for years. That was a stock of old Russian mortars being destroyed. There are hundreds more of those being lined up for destruction. And the mine clearers from the Omar organization are now searching for a new menace. American cluster bombs lying among the rubble of former Taliban buildings destroyed in the bombing last year. Ever since the days of the Great Game in the 19th century, when Britain and Russia jousted for influence across the plains of Afghanistan, it has been a battleground. Pakistan joined in, backing the Taliban, and now that America looks as if it's here to stay, it is no surprise that Iran too wants to join the new Great Game. What is a surprise is that the leadership here in Herat deny Iranian involvement. The governor of the province now is the man who ruled here before the Taliban, Ismail Khan, and ruled is the right word. Nothing that happens in Herat happens without his authority. Our interview started conventionally enough. He turned my question about Iranian influence back on me.
You are here in Herat, and I am asking you, have you seen any kind of Iranian interference in Herat?
But then he rose to his feet without warning, and ordering a map to be brought down from the wall, he conducted an impromptu reminder of recent history about how Iran would not help him after his escape from a Taliban jail.
Tajikistan, Uzbekistan.
So he had to travel around the top of the country to fight his way home.
No new guns or ammunition have come to Herat since the fall of the Taliban.
We have seen police in the streets carrying new guns. Who paid for those guns?
Firstly, there was a lot of money left by the Taliban. Secondly, there was no looting here. And thirdly, we take customs duties at the border. We get a lot of money through customs.
Finally, I asked him about democracy
And the smile was the smile on the face of a tiger.
You mean elections? It's far too early for that.
Now is not the time for the old mujahideen with their tales of daring do. Elbowed aside by the Gucci-clad, American-educated new leadership who are more at home in the political salons of Europe, old warriors like Ismail Khan do not fit the new shape of Afghanistan forged by Washington. American spin doctors in Kabul have been briefing against him, telling stories of how he wants to divide the country in two. Well, he may, although he says that he wants Afghanistan united. But he's a man in a nutcracker. The power games at stake are too big for Herat. He asked at the beginning of our interview if I had seen evidence of Iranian involvement here. Well, yes, it's everywhere, and a lot of it is benign. There's this school and mosque complex being built with Iranian money. And Iran has been generous in aid to the hundreds of thousands of Afghans now stranded in the huge refugee camps around Herat, in the 4th year of drought to hit the region. And then there are the new guns which have been issued to the police in Herat. They are Iranian-made copies of the Heckler & Koch MP5, a standard of special forces everywhere, since, ironically, the SAS used them in the Iranian embassy siege in London. And these are special squads of Iranian-trained Afghan fighters driving pretty openly around in Iranian-made jeeps, although we had to film them discreetly. They are the sharp edge of a projection of Iranian military influence which has been expanding here since the fall of the Taliban. We understand that they are controlled directly from Iran, although they operate inside Afghan military bases. Some have been trained in Lebanon with the Hezbollah, who are fighting against Israel. And there's a Hezbollah party here too, the Hezbollah Afghani, with quite a different outlook to the Lebanese Hezbollah. It has links to Iran, but just like Ismail Khan, its leader chooses to deny direct Iranian involvement.
Iran restrains itself and does not interfere in the political affairs of Afghanistan. They helped us during the Russian invasion. They helped the Mujahideen then. There are links, of course, but no political interference.
None of your soldiers go to Iran to train, and you receive no military equipment from Iran.
Iran does not help us militarily.
Running past the camp where we believe that half of the 700-strong Iranian-trained force live is a new road, coming straight from the Iranian border. It's being built by an Iranian road gang. Such are the murky depths of Afghan politics that because this is a contract with Ismail Khan's regional government, the new central government in Kabul may try to stop it, although it's the only piece of new road construction in the country after a quarter of a century of war. Truth is a rare commodity in Herat. In the bazaars, we found the beginnings of a political opposition meeting in the shadows for now. Ismail Khan's forces have stamped on political dissent. Few are prepared to speak out openly. But in any group of people on the streets, I found only a small minority would back Ismail Khan. They want change, and they want the central government.
Iran is training our soldiers, and Ismail Khan has his own army of 3,000 men, mostly from his own village. Many people have been put into prison for no reason. His soldiers go into remote villages, stealing possessions and raping women.
It is far too early to call the opposition a political party, but among those who stayed and suffered all those years rather than fleeing abroad are people meeting privately and speaking anonymously for fear of the consequences of speaking out.
We suffered a lot because of the jihad parties. We have been affected psychologically and physically. Our houses were destroyed, so we don't want to put our lives in danger again.
The way to reduce foreign interference in Afghanistan is to have a strong central government.
Wrestling is the popular local sport here. The aim is to pick up your opponent so that neither of his feet touch the ground, or pin him down. There are elaborate and complex rules. But the new balance of forces emerging in the region is a game played without rules. American influence in Afghanistan brings what Iran still calls the Great Satan far too close to home. Herat is being squeezed in the middle between them.
And that's all from reporters for this week.
Hello again. We still have low pressure, we still have some very wet weather to get rid of, but there is some good news this week because eventually, and we'll have to be patient, eventually an area of high pressure moves across us. There it is on Tuesday, an area of low pressure beginning to move away into the North Sea, and that brings cold air with it, and unfortunately we could see a return to the overnight frost, but at the same time that area of high pressure moves right across, so that means a lot of dry weather for most of us, and also we'll find the temperatures lowering all the time. But for the moment we have some very wet weather to get rid of, and we still have for the next few hours some more of that heavy rain and strong winds. Wales and England badly affected by that, some difficult driving conditions. This is our Met Office weather advice for you. Not just the rain but also the strong winds, gusts of between 40 and 50 miles an hour are possible. So to start the day, wet for England and Wales through the morning, and we'll find some more rain also across the northern parts of Scotland, and once that bumps into some colder air across Shetland, that will turn to sleet and snow. Between the two we'll find a scattering of showers but also a little bit of sunshine here and there, so not too bad. But again, some of those showers turning out to be heavy and blustery through the afternoon, and a windy day for most of us anywhere really from the eastern side of England southwards. Temperature-wise, 12 or 13 degrees, so perhaps that's the good news, so still quite mild. But as we move into Northern Ireland, just 11 here, and then once we get into the north of Scotland, no higher than 6 degrees. But it's the wet weather that could cause problems, and through the day on Monday and overnight Monday into Tuesday, still some more rain to come for Wales and southwest England. And again, the risk of some local flood problems. There's a number you can phone to find out more information. That's the Environment Agency's floodline number, 0845 988 1188 for more information. Now the winds do change direction. We cut off those mild southwesterly winds, and by the middle part of the week, once that low moves across to the North Sea, we draw down those cold northerly winds, which means on Wednesday night we'll find quite extensive frosts for the northern half of the United Kingdom, and the blues illustrating those nighttime temperatures below freezing coming further south by the time we get to Thursday night. So quite a change in the temperatures over the next few days. Tuesday still has temperatures in double figures. We still find this line of rain and wet weather here across the central and southern parts of Scotland into the north of England, slowly drifting southwards through Wednesday and introducing the colder air as it does so. Eventually it'll move away to the east, and then we'll find quite a bit of sunshine around on Thursday, and certainly the driest day of the week. A little bit of rain, patchy rain getting back into the northwest of Scotland. But I think that high pressure will hold to the end of the week and give us some sunshine to enjoy at last. But look at the change in temperatures, down to just 7 or 8 degrees, so quite a change and a drop in those temperatures over the next 3 or 4 days. Now, if you're interested in what's happening for Salt Lake City for the Winter Olympics, well, it's going to remain fine, I think, for the next couple of days. Sunshine there, and daytime temperatures struggling to go much above around 0 or -1. Some of the events, well, Monday has the women's downhill skiing. That's the Snow Basin ski area, and that begins at 5 p.m. Of course, you can follow it on both BBC One, BBC Two, and also on News 24. Into Europe, we still have an area of low pressure on the eastern side of the Mediterranean. That's generating a fair amount of wet weather over the next few days. But eventually it'll move away, and we're not just seeing the unsettled weather. The whole of the north of Europe is seeing some outbreaks of rain over the next few days. The best chance to see the sunshine is really in the south. Southern parts of Spain and Portugal hold on to that fine, dry weather, and probably the best temperatures as well. But through the Mediterranean, not too bad over the next few days. Let me leave you then with a summary of what's happening across the United Kingdom through the week. From midweek onwards, it turns colder and thankfully drier. Bye for now.
Trading time.
Time and a half.
Downtime. Overtime.
New York time.
Lunchtime. I don't think so.
Flexi time. Commuting time.
In the business world,
there are only 2 times that matter.
BBC News 24 brings you all the business news
you need to know at 40 minutes past the hour. Plus a look at what your money is doing
in the Money Minute at 25 past the hour.
Summertime, nighttime, daytime,
winter time,
springtime,
humid time.
breathing time,
snowy time,
autumn time. For all the weather news you need, there are only 2 times that really matter. BBC News 24 provides you with comprehensive weather forecasts up to the hour and up to the half hour.
Just before the headlines.
The UN expresses outrage at the latest Israeli airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. The EU election monitoring team for Zimbabwe arrives in a determined mood. Growing fears at Ground Zero over the effect of toxins on recovery workers. And dead fish and dengue fever threaten to cast a shadow over Rio's Carnival parade. Hello, this is BBC News. I'm Deborah Mackenzie. Israeli tanks have entered the West Bank city of Nablus, surrounding Joseph's Tomb, a Jewish religious site previously abandoned by the Israeli army in the current round of fighting. Earlier in the Gaza Strip, Israeli planes fired several missiles at the Palestinian security headquarters in Gaza City. The attack left a number of people injured, including 2 UN employees. The raids were in apparent retaliation for a Palestinian attack on an army base in southern Israel near the town of Beersheba, in which 2 soldiers were killed.
Gaza under fire again tonight. Israeli warplanes striking a number of locations. A United Nations office damaged in the process, but the real target here, Yasser Arafat. Israel's not trying to kill him, but it is trying to persuade his own people to drive him out. The airstrikes followed this, an attack outside an army base in the southern city of Beersheba. 2 women soldiers gunned down as they had lunch. Then the attackers themselves shot dead. A robot sent in to check their bodies for explosives. News of the bloodshed waiting for the Israeli leader as he touched down from Washington. Condemning Yasser Arafat one more time. In the White House, he tried to bury him, telling the Americans to cut him off as Israel has done. Smiles on the tarmac, but the Israeli leader didn't get everything he wanted from George Bush. America not quite ready to abandon Yasser Arafat, under heavy guard in the West Bank today. But talking about the support of his people. That's Israel's problem. It can dream of new leaders, but Palestinians will never be forced to give this one up. Tonight, Israel is considering its next move. Officials say there will be more pressure put on Yasser Arafat, more strikes at targets close to him, more attempts to find an alternative leadership. Officials here claim they have a free hand from the White House in all of this, but according to a senior American source, they're exaggerating. Orla Guerin, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Ariel Sharon's security cabinet has been in emergency session. Another of our correspondents in Jerusalem, Caroline Hawley, has been monitoring the meeting.
Well, Israel's security cabinet has been meeting late into the night at Ariel Sharon's personal farm in southern Israel. And what we're hearing is that they want to keep up the pressure on Yasser Arafat, indeed to step up the pressure on him. Now, what we've seen in response to the attack in Beersheba, in which 2 Israeli women soldiers were killed, is an attack on Yasser Arafat's security compound in Gaza. Nearby, the UN compound was also damaged, and we've had a strong condemnation from the UN Special Envoy, who has said that targeting Yasser Arafat's ability to maintain law and order won't serve Israel's security needs. There's also been a strong condemnation from Yasser Arafat's spokesman, Nabil Abu Rudaini, who has said that the Israeli attack will lead to a greater explosion in the region. So I'm afraid what we've got underway here is a new cycle of violence, with every possibility, really, of further bloodshed to come.
And as you heard there, the United Nations Special Envoy to the region has expressed outrage that heavy bombs were deployed close to civilian areas and UN facilities. 2 UN workers were injured in the attacks. Lionel Brisson is UN Director of Operations working with Palestinian refugees in Gaza. He says they've repeatedly told the Israelis the whereabouts of the UN in Gaza, but it does not prevent them coming under attack.
Well, I would say that the vicinity of the UN installations from other Palestinian Authority buildings or security forces in Gaza is something which you could find everywhere. The space is very rare in Gaza, so the UN installations are close from Palestinian Authority installations too.
You're unarmed and you're unprotected. Will it deter you from staying in the area?
Well, you know, I must say that we are living and working in a very difficult context. You know, there is this violence daily. We have, you know, airstrike regularly. I would like to stress that our people, our staff are working in very difficult and stressful conditions, as well as the civilian population of Gaza in general.
Yes, what would happen if the protection and assistance you give to Palestinian refugees were to cease?
Well, we are trying to provide to Palestinian refugees relief and social services, education services, health services for alleviating the difficulties they are encountering since the new Intifada started. It has been the UN mandate since 50 years to help the Palestinian refugees to live in acceptable conditions, waiting for a permanent solution to their status, to their problem.
Will you be making any representations to the Israelis over this?
Yes, we are regularly, you know, protesting and informing the Israeli authorities of